Thought we'd start off this episode with, before we get into our kind of continuing our season theme, and what this episode is dedicated to, that actually we've been really enjoying hearing all our lovely listeners, what they've been crafting and creating while they've been listening to us. So we've had chocolate making, tea blending, candle pouring, and all manner of other things. So we'd love to continue that conversation. So please do let us know what you're doing alongside listening to us. And we thought we'd start with catching up on what we've been creating as well in between episodes. So, Lee, let's start with you. You've been Have you been busy crafting away in your copy cottage?
I'm going to forget half of what I've been up to inevitably. Uh, but I've been taking two clients through my Distill Your Message um, package. So they're both at different stages at the moment. One, we've been through the foundational pieces of mission statement, ideal client, core web copy, and a couple of blog posts. And now we're at the exciting final phase of getting that lead magnet and nurture sequence sorted out so that she's got everything she needs to get up and running
Lovely.
and start getting her business out there. And the other client who is on Still Your Message with me at the moment is a bit earlier in the journey. So we've been through the messaging workshop, we've done the mission statement and the ideal client, and we're about to start web copy with a little bit of help from a good friend who's going to be providing some SEO input. I
Yeah.
wonder who that could be.
No prizes for guessing.
Um, and I've also been working on some brand stories and tone of voice stuff with one of my brand agency clients. Um, NDAs, I'm not really allowed to talk about those, but suffice it to say, they're always really good fun and I learn lots from them. And on a more personal note, I've kind of been working on my own sort of creating a bit more space for myself and to take care of myself, given my health stuff this year, and having another surgery coming up later on in the year. So I've been trying stand-up paddleboard yoga, which is brilliant fun. And I definitely need to work on my strength.
Feeling the aches and pains of the aftermath.
What about you? What have you been creating? I know you've been very busy.
I've been very busy. What have I not been creating? I guess so I don't waffle on for ages. I'll summarize in I've been creating my first website template. So
Oh.
starting to talk about that a little bit more. In the background, I've been hinting at it in a couple of my newsletters that I'm having a bit of a shift of services so I can kind of better align with clients that are in different phases of their business journey. And so I'm creating kind of very tailored templates, Squarespace templates for nutritionists, nutritional therapists, and therapists is kind of the core offering that I'm going to be creating. So I'm creating the first one of those. Hopefully get that live pretty soon, just so that gives people um, something that's a bit more affordable, but I'm still customizing it for them. So they still get my expertise and input, and they're not left out in the wilderness to do it all on their own and figure it all out. I'm actually going to help them customize it, but it's a case of having a nice range of templates they can choose from. So it kind of speeds up that process just to get them started with kind of all the essentials and really kind of putting all my knowledge, I guess, of working with so many clients in that field into something so it's a bit more robust for them. I've been actually working on quite a lot of proposals the last 2 weeks, which is I don't always do proposals, depends on the project, but is also a little bit of a creating more work for myself because I've not had got my own website updates done and my own website working as well for me as I like it working for my clients. So I've got a bit of a gap, so I'm filling the gap with the proposals at the moment. So um, need to get those updates done very soon. And then I'm about to start crafting a brand identity for a client, bringing together all that kind of first inspirational piece. And then, yeah, I'm kind of finishing off a few projects. So we're just kind of putting some of those final pieces together, like you said, so they're kind of ready to set up and launch with everything they need and not having to worry about stressing about how to make the tech work in the background to
Mm.
deliver the lead magnets, etc., etc. So yeah, finishing off a few projects at the same time, whilst planning a move. That's all now moving ahead.
Yeah.
So again, something we've been witching on about in different episodes. Moving to the coast by the sea. So finally getting that sort of properly moving. So that's going to be playing a big part of life in the coming months. So yeah, it's been a busy time.
Yes, it has. So please do come and tell us what you've been creating alongside listening to this episode and the other episodes. Um, Now let's talk about the theme of this episode and the wider part the wider part of the conversation that it's from. So, um, as we've said in the other episodes, the theme of the season is setting foundations in your business. We're talking about what these look like, how to get started, the difference they make, and then we're going into trying to give you that detail on those foundations so that you can take some action. Um, Today's foundation that we're going to talk about is the most crucial foundation, and it's what everything else springs out of um, and roots into. And that is your ideal customer or client, depending on how you refer to them. And that's part of the conversation too. Um, I'm not going to beat around the bush. This is brave work. Um, there's lots of shoulds and people pleasing stuff and fear that comes up when you start doing this work that you have to let go of through the process.
Mm.
Um, but it's really important that we do this because your ideal clients are the real star of your business story and they're worth it. Um, and when you center them in the story, everything flows much more naturally. Um, and particularly when you're introverted or feel uncomfortable about the spotlight, um, centering the story on them makes it a lot more easeful. So, in this episode, we're going to talk about the importance of knowing exactly who you're talking to, as well as who you're not talking to, what you'll be able to do differently when you do this deeper work on your right people, and the impact it can have on your business, which is the title of this episode. This is about attracting the right kinds of opportunities to your website. Um, and we're going to talk about how your ideal clients can be brought to life. So, Sammy, I know you say it's ideal for people to have this work done before reaching the kind of stage of working with you. Maybe we should start there.
Yeah. Obviously by the time you're kind of instructing design work, um, you really need to have that kind of clarity on who you enjoy working with, who you want to be working with, and who you want to attract. Because, and we'll talk about this probably a bit later in more detail, but the the visual cues are really that very immediate first interaction with your client. And so, unfortunately, people do often judge a book by its cover in the first instance. And so we need those visual cues to be on point, and to connect with the right people. And they can be a really powerful way of connecting and repelling people to your work, which saves you time and energy and heartache sort of later on.
Mm.
Um, as you say, it's not necessarily easy work, depending on your business stage. Like if you're just starting out, it can be a little bit more tricky to know who they are if you haven't worked with that many people, and that is a journey that you go on. But I think for all levels of businesses, whether you're kind of coming to that sort of reevaluating things, rebranding, resetting the foundations, which is what we talk about with our sort of limelight offer that we've mentioned.
Mm.
It's still crucial to actually recalibrate that ideal client piece because you've probably or definitely moved on maybe, or refining more, or you kind of think, okay, this is the type of people I work with, but actually these are the people that really help me create my best work or make me the
Mm.
most inspired. And I think that bit of the conversation of isn't often spoken about. It's more about where do they live and, the kind of more boring demographic stuff, which plays a role, but we like to approach it in a more soulful way. Um, so it has been fun to help clients uncover some of those gems in our conversations, and I do enjoy that. But ideally, they kind of want that nailed down by the time they're getting to the stage of me, because it just means the project can move forward with a lot more clarity and the design work. We're set on the right path, basically.
Mm.
With your work, you're kind of more in the trenches with helping people craft those soulmate client kind of profiles in the first instance. How do you how do you kind of approach that with a new client?
Mm. So it's going to be a little bit different how I've been working to how we work on Limelight, because obviously it's the two of us
Mm.
um, pulling this stuff through. How I work with um, my own clients and have worked up until this point um, is basically that 2 hour messaging workshop is a deep dive into all of those aspects. Um, it's picking the brains on who you have worked with, what was, particular to them, whether you actually enjoyed working with them. Because there was something you said there about knowing who your customers are. And I think that's really true for a lot of established businesses. They come and they say, oh, well, we know who our customers are. And that's amazing. But one, it's usually not down on paper for everyone in an organization or who's brought in to do stuff to see. It's no good in your head. It's really easy to get pulled in multiple directions when it's only in your head. And the other thing is you might know who you work with, but that's not necessarily the same as knowing who you want to work with. Um, and getting that clarity on who you really want to work with is the big the big thing, really. And then you said demographics, we try and work in a more soulful, holistic way, and that's absolutely true. Demographics have a place, but they're part of building the picture. So, saying there's a really good graphic and it's got Ozzy Osbourne and Charles when he was Prince. Um, there's relevance to that context in it, and it's basically they're both princes, one of darkness, one of this. They both live in a castle, blah blah blah. But they are radically different
Yeah.
people. If you went just by demographics and created something based on those demographics, you wouldn't connect with both, and potentially you wouldn't connect with either of them.
Yeah,
Um,
that's really good. It's a really good visualization.
it's really difficult not
See how
having it
that
in
can go
front of
so
me to use
wrong.
its cue here. Um, So the demographics are helpful. So having an age, a job, knowing where they live, um, and having a name for them, that sort of thing, that's really important because it helps you build them into a real person.
Mm.
But as well as that, we need those empathy points really clear and down on paper. What are they struggling with? What are they lying awake at night, doom scrolling down the Google rabbit hole, searching for answers? What's their biggest struggle? What do they really want their life to be? All of those really deep, sometimes hard to allow yourself to feel yourself, because sometimes what our customers and clients are dealing with, that's not always very nice to sit with yourself. But once you have that down on paper, and that's what I pull out through the messaging workshop and building the picture of these ideal clients in combination with demographic stuff, you have a real person we actually have three real people because that's what I deliver in the document. With a face, because I use stock imagery to make them into a real person, and then you feel like you're aiming everything at a specific person. That includes an offering, whether that's a product or a service, or a freebie, and then everything that you do is linked back to that person and what they need. And then writing website copywriting, sales pages, that all flows out from there. And your work flows out from there as well.
Yeah. I think, as you said, the real kind of linchpin of that is creating that emotional connection
Mm,
with Sarah, with James. You know, it's like it kind of brings you back to, okay, what does Sarah need? What does Sarah need to hear? Where is Sarah in her journey? Rather than, you know, the 30 to 50-year-old woman who's like, it doesn't connect. Like it, and if you're not connecting with them, then how can they connect with you in a way? Like, whereas if you've got that kind of emotional connection to them, um, you know, and you can connect on that level, it's that kind of like, feel like you're in my head. Yes, this is me. You know, you kind of, it gives you so much. It gives you so much that can inform your business, not just around what you're offering and making sure that matches with what they need. It's about timing of sending out some content. You know, if your main client base is young mums, maybe you're doing, you know, postnatal coaching or exercises or dietary advice, then there's no point sending out, you know, messages when mums are on the school run, or, you know that they're like getting kids ready in the morning. You know, it helps you really stand in their shoes and structure things that are going to help you connect with them. And that could, you know, as I say, in so many different ways, how it kind of feeds through your business later on. Um, and I think probably the biggest thing that, or biggest struggle that we see people we work with come up against is often the kind of, but I want to help everybody.
mm,
And we do it ourselves. And it's kind of, you know, having to, it gives you ownership over saying, these are my people and these are not my people. And that's not a bad thing. It's not, you're not being mean to them. People will, there's other people that they will connect with. And it just gives you that kind of power, I think, to kind of not be worrying about all the other people that you're kind of leaving by the wayside, so to speak. And I think because we work with a lot of lovely, soulful clients, like that's a kind of worry of theirs. But I think what's interesting about the ideal client work is that actually when you start to sort of narrow down your focus and narrow your audience, it kind of has the opposite effect. And I think that feels
mm.
really counterintuitive for a lot of people.
Yeah, everybody, and I don't often make sweeping generalizations. And if you want to counter me on this one, that's cool. I don't think you'll be able to. Everybody wants to be seen and understood. And there is so much power and capacity for you to stand out amongst a crowd of businesses doing similar things to what you do, um, by leaning into that and being that person or business who shows them that you see them and you get them. And there's always a counter to this of people going, but isn't that manipulative? And the answer is no, because if you're worried about it, it's not being manipulative. You're being of service by showing people you understand them and get them. There's, there's nothing sinister
Yeah.
in that. What's more on the sinister side is saying, I want to help everyone. I want to keep them all for me. They're all going to be mine. If you just let go of that and embrace the fact that there are right people for you and that there's a right person for the people who aren't right for you, that's so much more fulfilling and sustainable for you in terms of managing your energy.
Yeah. And when you're trying to talk to everybody, then that's when you get into that kind of being a bit bland, middle of the road
Mhm.
territory where potentially no one's going to connect at all. Rather than
Mhm.
everybody connecting, it's going to be no one's going to connect because if it just seems pretty ordinary and, oh, you don't really get me and my problem's quite different, if we take the Prince analogy again, Prince Charles versus the Prince of Darkness are going to have very different language, different interests, different struggles, their lifestyle, who they're interacting with, everything is completely opposite. So um again, it comes back to kind of being able to stand in someone else's shoes.
Mm.
Um and also from your own business point of view, you don't want to be, if you're trying to create services or products for everybody, you're gonna burn yourself out. You're gonna have too many directions, too much noise, too many choices and offers, and we know that confused people don't buy. If there's too many options, they're just gonna get kind of paralyzed with the choice. Um, so it's actually, you're making it easier for your client and you're making it easier for yourself because if we come back to kind of like the anti-muse, that the non-soulful client,
Mm.
um do you want to be spending a lot of time on discovery calls talking to people that are not the right fit, that or you feel like you work with them but actually that doesn't make it enjoyable for you and you're not enjoying the process and that's not a very fulfilling business. You can waste a lot of time and energy doing that, and maybe yes, when you're starting out you're going to need to maybe do a
Mm.
bit of that and experimenting with different clients or different things, or releasing different products maybe to test the market and see what is working, um, and then that refine process. But you want to be kind of be doing that fairly quickly. You don't want to be spending months and months crafting a course that nobody needs,
Mm.
or something like that. So it's it can feel like, as you say, a little bit scary to kind of let people go in that process, but it's the time spent doing this is crucial to literally every single step of these, as building on these foundations and implementing that into your business. Um, it's pretty hard to do our jobs without it.
And it's hard to do your job as a business owner without it. I do see a lot of business owners shy away from this part because it is time consuming. You need quite a lot of headspace. You've got a million and one other things that you need to be doing. It's not it not going to necessarily move the needle for you tomorrow. Um, because you need to be out there selling stuff and getting people through the door, and this work is an essential foundation to achieving that, but you need to do the work and then you need to implement stuff from it.
Yeah.
So it's not an overnight thing, although it does have an enormous impact on your thinking and how you see your business. And it's a lot more strategic and focused. So I think it can make enormous shifts overnight. But I do see a lot of business owners shying away from it because it seems enormous. And it is tricky to do on your own.
Mm.
There's it is one of those things that you kind of need a second brain for, just to pick your brains for a couple of hours and then you go back to doing what you do while someone else pulls it all together into something that's actually useful. Because the other thing is most people don't know how to pull this information together in a way that's actually going to be helpful to them long term. It's not, don't do a load of profiling, end up with reams and reams of stuff that just sits in a file somewhere and never sees the light of day. That's not very bloody useful. Um, it needs to be in a format that actually you can look at it at a glance on a daily basis when you're coming up with a new product or writing an email newsletter and know at a glance, quickly get back in that frame of mind. Right, this is who I'm talking to. This is what they need to hear right now, rather than constantly having to reverse engineer everything as well, which I see a lot of is, right, I've built this thing, now I need to promote it and sell it. Who ha and you end up with kind of waffle and a really unclear, unfocused message coming through, whether that's in emails or social media posts,
Yeah.
because you started from, I've built the thing because it was bugging me. This is often the way, isn't it? We get fixed on an idea. And I made the thing because the idea was keeping me awake. Now we've made the thing. Now I need to work out how to sell it. If we start from who we're creating stuff for, when we get those brilliant ideas, we can then choose which ones we follow in that instance. We can have a dumping ground for all of our brilliant ideas and focus on the ones that our ideal clients need right now. And that is so much better for our sanity.
Yeah, it is. It definitely helps with the kind of shiny object syndrome thing
Mm,
running your own business. Like I think most people struggle with that. You have lots of ideas, lots of this, lots of that, and I can't count the amount of times I've said to clients like, yeah, but does it fit with your ideal client? So let's come back. I mean, mine are pinned to my notice board above my desk. So as you say, at a glance, I'm like, okay, is that in line with what they need, what they need to hear? And not to say that they're set in stone forever, because they're not.
no,
They
no,
will
they
change.
evolve.
And you may need to create new ones if you're creating, a new event, a new product, a new service, then maybe, you need a different avatar or profile um, for that. So it will grow with your business, but it meets you where you are now,
Mm,
or can be a little bit aspirational in terms of they're the people I really want to go after. Okay, let's be really brave. Um, and it just acts as it's it's called one of the anchors. It refocuses you straight away. And I think it's really hard because it is hard to kind of let go of stuff.
mm,
Um, and it's a powerful thing to be like, that just gives you agency to do that. And come back to them and be like, well, no, it might be a great thing, but actually that's not ready for now. And that's not going to serve the people I want to be helping. Um, I wanted to give an example just so for people listening, if they're kind of struggling, if this is a bit of a new concept for them of like how does it work in practice? And I'm sure my client won't mind me mentioning her, but I work with somebody who's a therapist, and I know she went through a bit of a journey before she got to me of who her audience was. And she landed on helping people working on the front line, so police officers,
mm,
fire men and women, NHS staff, people, kind of on the front line. She was a police officer herself and had been through quite a journey in her career. And it was so much more powerful because straight away she was talking to them. I know what you're going through. It wasn't like she was like, oh, I want to work with people that have stressful jobs. Okay, but what does that look like? That's very different from, a police officer that's turning up to a potentially dangerous scene compared to someone that's in the banking industry and has a very stressful job because, they're dealing with people's hedge funds or whatever. Like that looks very different for those people. So straight away, it's like she's more flexible in hours because she knows, when they have calls or whatever, like it needs to work around their shift. They work shifts. Straight away there's all these things that help craft her service so it fits the need of her clients and can talk on that level of like, I know what you're going through. And that's not to say you have to have done the job or been in the situation of the person that you're working with, but when you are looking at it through their lens, you can see like what their struggles are, why they might not be sleeping at night, and it creates such a more powerful connection.
mm,
And you become that right fit person for them because they're like, well, I know you're gonna understand me. Or it could be more on a values level that For instance, I don't particularly want to work with businesses that aren't really kind of conscious led and ethical and, thinking of people and planet first. So it helps to filter out the wrong fit people, as we've already mentioned.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, you kind of reminded me of one of the examples I wanted to bring up. Actually, I have two, there's two that demonstrate the same issue of practitioners who wanted to specialize in helping men or women. Um, so one wanted to work with men only, and the other wanted to work with women only. But actually coming out and saying that felt enormously scary, because for them it's, but I could help both. Um, so it had to be a sort of it was almost like a permission slip for them to say, no, these are the people I really do want to work with. And the thing that we talked about during this process of coming to, it's okay for you to say, I only want to serve women or I only want to serve men, because there are other people out there doing similar things to what you do for the other half of the population. That's okay. What you're doing in planting your flag is being really clear who you can help and how you can help them and making that connection with them. Um, what you're also doing is letting go of the fear of cutting off, you know, a financial supply potentially. Because the reality is whilst your soulmate client avatars, as we call them in the marketing world, so the picture of your ideal clients, um, they may be gendered and they may have particular identifiers like age and where they live and their job and stuff. That's really for you and anyone else working in your business. They don't see that. What they see is the copy and visuals that comes through off the back of that, which sometimes we're explicit that we work with women or we work with men, and that's fine. Um, but you're still probably going to get approached by people who don't quite fit the mold, and this applies whether it's gender based or otherwise, um, because the energy that you put into the words and the visuals will still connect with and magnetically attract people who aren't quite 100% in that mold, but they have the right mindset and the right approach and the right set of challenges that you still might choose to say yes to working with them, even though they don't quite fit your ideal clients.
Yeah, you get to choose. It doesn't mean that whoever comes through your door that doesn't fit that you say no to, you make a judgment call. Um, and people may be coming through who maybe, you know, don't fit that kind of profile. It's horrible because it almost sounds like you're profiling people, which is
Yeah,
a
yeah.
nice term. But the soulmate client um representations is it is your choice. And they might be coming, other people outside of that might be coming through from like a recommendation. My friends recommended you or so and so's recommended me to you. And so they're kind of cutting straight through to you. And then you get to make a choice of whether you can still work with someone. And coming back to that, if you're working with predominantly women, it doesn't mean that, a male client might come through the door and you just say, well, no, because I only work with women. You get to choose. Um, it doesn't mean that you have to say no to everyone other than. Um, do you think some of that worry comes from, people that are conscious of being inclusive? I think obviously um there's a good argument for inclusivity in a lot of ways, but
Mm.
not to be mixed up with there's enough people for everybody. We can all serve our own people because I've
Mm.
seen it, people saying like, oh, you should be doing this and you should be doing that online to a business owner. And it's like, well, they don't have to serve everybody. They're not being deliberately non-inclusive. It's just that they serve this
Mm.
group of people and there's somebody else that will serve that group of people and so on and so forth. And I think imagine that might be some of the fear coming behind it because it's like, well, I'm a good person. I want to be,
Yeah.
inclusive and accessible and all those things. Um, but the reality is slightly different in terms of, working in your specialism.
Yeah, I think maybe what we need to hang on to here is the thing that is probably possibly a helpful analogy in a sort of relationship context. We would say there's someone out there for everyone. Can we hold on to the same thought when it comes to our businesses and not judge ourselves or judge others for deciding to serve a particular group?
Yeah,
You do you, I do me, that's okay.
yeah,
There's someone out there for everyone. And I think it's that holding of but it's an abundance thing, isn't it? It's knowing that there are enough of your right people out there for you to plant your flag and say, those are the people I'm serving, as well as that the other side of the coin of people not judging people for serving a particular group.
yeah. And it's in that client's best interest because if they're going to get the best outcome
Mm.
from working with someone else rather than you, then that's a very honest and kind position to come from.
Mm.
I am not the best person for you, but you could probably do so much better if maybe you have people you can recommend on to, which is lovely as well. It's kind of difficult, I think, for people to kind of get to that point where they feel comfortable with that. But it's it's always a work in progress, isn't it? Running a business.
Yeah, yeah.
You know,
And I think that's one of the reasons that can help working with someone on this is because you can get that permission slip and get that nudge and that encouragement out of the safe zone and get that confirmation that the people you want to serve are out there and you can really go after them. You can really show yourself in front of them because you don't really need to go after them. You don't need to persuade or convince them because they're already ready for you. That is
yeah,
the joy of going after your ideal people. Who's going after is wrong turn of phrase, really. But
yeah, I know. Um,
so we should probably talk about language and the impact talking, having that clear picture of your ideal clients and then talking to them,
yeah,
how that feeds
that's
into your work.
yeah, it's fundamental. So when you have got that kind of um clear idea of your ideal client, and particularly when you're working with them already or you're interacting with them, is really understanding their language,
Mm.
what kind of language they're using, and that can be looked at in lots of different ways. So, if you're writing your newsletter, for example, then are there like colloquial terms that your ideal clients are going to get because maybe you're a local based business. Um, are they of a certain age range so that they get the references, kind of cultural references. You can have some nice fun and play with it in that area, but also where it becomes really important in my kind of work later on is with the SEO piece. Um, because if you don't know who your ideal client is and you don't know the language they're using, you're not going to be able to connect the dots and know what they're searching for online in order for your website, your page, your service, your product to appear in their search results. And I know a lot of people would love people to find them on the internet and have people coming to them, but we have to work at creating that. And you can't do that unless you know who you're talking to and you know
Mm.
what language they're using. That's real gold dust in there in terms of the problems that they're trying to solve, the solutions that they're looking for, whether that be symptoms, whether that be a product, um, a service, whatever it is, they will probably be describing what you're offering in a very different way to how
Mm,
you see it and how you describe it, or how you've been taught to talk about it in, an educational setting, um, and things like that. So again, it's about connecting with the right people. So that feeds through all that, and obviously that terminology, you want that on your website. There's obviously strategic places it goes, but also in the kind of general feel and vibe of the website too, through the copy. But there's that strategic piece underneath that's underpinning it of, okay, let's really get to understand
mm.
um, what they're searching for and how you can provide the best answer for them and the information they need. And that works on two levels, really. One level is people are at that earlier stage of that information gathering, which is where like having a blog or a podcast or YouTube videos, comes in really helpful with helping to address those questions. And then obviously with your services, you're kind of more, that language is slightly different, because then you're looking at people that are kind of ready, they know they need it, they're aware of the solution that they need, and they're ready to buy. Um, so there's kind of two camps, so to speak, that we work on in that kind of SEO piece.
Yeah, and I think um, just to mention at this point, when I'm pulling together these profiles, I do include what do I Google, and that's usually really helpful because it inevitably informs what blog posts should we be writing, what do they need to hear to you know, get people, if they're not already ready to buy, because it does take multiple touch points. Um, the wisdom on how many varies depending on what source you look at. But basically, you need to do some relationship building generally before people are going to be ready to buy from you, unless they know you really well already. Friends and family are always the first ones to buy from you. There's a reason for that. It's because they know you, not because they pity you. Um, when you have that clarity on what they're Googling, you can tailor things, as you say, much more closely to that in terms of their language, but also the topics that they're searching for, and be a lot more useful to them and that provide value, which I know is a big thing for SEO.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the most important thing. I mean, you're yes, there's that strategic piece, but you're writing for people, not for Google, first and foremost. And it is being of service and being helpful to the people that are looking for that information, because if it's not, they're going to leave pretty quickly and go elsewhere to find it. There's millions of versions of page one on Google, depending on what people are searching for, and there's lots of results. So um, people have a lot of choice on where to get that information. So making sure that you're providing that value and answer their question in the best possible way is a way for them to find you. Um, and again, it's not a manipulative thing. It's just I'm providing a really good answer for you. And, I have the expertise and the knowledge, or the service product that helps you. So we can solve that problem. Um, and so it's making sure that you're getting in front of the eyes of the people that need you most. So it does come down to, yeah, serving those clients in the best possible way.
So, in short, the ideal client is the absolute fundamental foundation because your web copy, your emails, your blog posts, your social media content, your products and services, and all of your design and brand elements, they all stem from that when you use that foundation as the building point. And everything is much more focused, clear, compelling, and feels good for you. you come out with a lot more confidence when you stand in that I know who I'm talking to and I know what they need to hear.
And I know what I'm gonna write, put out there, when you know what's going to resonate with someone, um, it gives you the opportunity to almost go a bit beyond your business as well. If, um, for example, your ideal client, and you kind of know their habits and lifestyle a little bit more. There's a big difference between someone that loves going to a farmer's market, grows their own veggies at home, you know, to someone that shops in Harrods, Whole Foods, whatever, you can then share if you're growing vegetables at home, you can share stuff on that. It gives you a richness that you can share those kind of commonalities with people and connect in other ways as well. So there's so many different ways you can look at it. Um, and I guess to touch upon a little bit with the branding, there was another good example of a client I worked with where um, I was just doing branding for her, I wasn't doing a website, so it was like a little branding sprint, and she was actually quite surprised with the depth of work we went into. She was kind of thinking, "Oh, I thought it was like colors I liked, and this is what's good." And I was like, "Well, no, we need it to make sure that we're connecting, but again, really looking at that kind of attracting the right type of person and what those attributes." So she had her ideal clients. We looked at who she was working with, and again, I really centered on who are you enjoying working with, who are you getting the best results with,
Mm.
because there are people that you can work with that, maybe are not committed and not action takers, that are not going to get that result. And obviously that's not very fulfilling for you, knocks your confidence, impacts your business in lots of ways. And so we actually looked at the type of clients she was working with, and they were from slightly different backgrounds. They were doing different jobs, different things in life that they were tackling. But actually, what they really had in common was that they were at the stage where they were taking action. They were kind of ready for the next
Mm.
phase of their life, and they were ready to take action on it. And so that was a really great insight. They were like, okay, well, we want your branding to speak to that. We want it to be a bit more bold, a bit more forward motion, um, and have that kind of boldness in there to kind of reference that action taking. So again, it's not just because it's male or female, or they're from this part of the country or from this background. It can actually be, it's quite nuanced, and depending on who you're working with, actually something like that is like, okay, this is the stage you're at, this is what's in common with them all, and actually that helps me get them the best result because they're willing to do the work and they're willing to put the input in and stuff. I mean, that's obviously for a service-based business, but it just shows the kind of
Mm.
variety, how it can, and that impact, the kind of ripple effect from that, when you actually nail down on, okay, these are the people that I really want to focus on. And God, how fulfilling will my business be when I'm working with those dreamy clients?
It's powerful work.
Let's say, have we sold it to you yet?
Roll up, roll up.
Yeah. I think you can tell that we're both pretty passionate about this piece of work. And I know like not everybody will resonate with, a fictional character, but maybe to get started, it could be somebody you know. It could be, that will really get a kind of emotional connection if it's
Mm.
actually somebody, you actually know, and you can kind of have them in mind when you're thinking about things. So you don't have to necessarily just sort of pluck someone um out. It can be someone that's kind of known to you, or a business that's known to you, that can help kind of guide that process.
And often for newbie business owners, it's basically them about 5 years ago is the best place to start. In case you're struggling and you need a prompt to get started on this work yourself right now, the best place to start is usually you yourself 5 years ago. How are you feeling? What were you struggling with? Because inevitably you've made a big shift to doing what you do now. And so you can really identify with someone who is 5 to 10 years behind you on the journey. You know what they've tried, what hasn't worked for them, what they really want to be feeling. Then you know all of that stuff. Get that down on paper as a starting jumping off point.
Yeah.
Um, in terms of what you were saying there about it could be someone you know, I do find when we do this digging that they're often kind of a patchwork of
Mm,
the best bits of people or customers that we've worked with or had. Um, they're the I don't say the best bits because the challenges that they're dealing with aren't best bits. They're not highlights, but they are usually the jumping off point is usually a combination of people that we've worked with before, um, that we'd love to see in one human being so that we could have the most impact and get the most reward, from that energy exchange.
yeah. And I think you're not expected to just sit down and write an ideal client profile. It is a case of going back to a lot of those points that we've touched on of who do you enjoy working with, who have you already worked with, are there any similarities, who's your aspirational client, particularly if you're further on down the line
Mm.
and, you've served a lot of clients, but you're like, actually, I'm now ready to step up and work with these people. Um, be bold and be brave to kind of dream a bit and think, okay, who do I actually who would I be so excited if an email dropped in my inbox or an order came through from, you know, what would get you really excited as well. So I think it's being a bit brave and then working off of a lot of those points to then start
Mm,
drafting it. Um, because yeah, it can be tricky just to kind of have a blank sheet and like
mm,
I've got to think up three people now.
yeah. And if that's too hard, start with the reverse technique, which is write down your demons. Write down who would give you the
Yeah.
absolute heebie-jeebies to jump on a call with or have come into your business. Um, what is it about them that you don't like? What are your kind of pet peeves in terms of customers and clients? What kind of attitudes, mindsets, behaviors do you not want people coming in with? Get that down on paper if you're really struggling to get started with the ideal side of things.
That's a really good tip. I think that's probably quite a powerful exercise and probably people can relate to that maybe a little bit quicker
Mm,
uh, on that side. And as we said, I guess in a way to wrap up with maybe a couple more tips is that, revisit them as well once you've got them down. Probably would you say once a year, um, just to check in, right, the right ideal client, and then if you are creating something new, then thinking, okay, who's the right fit for this? And actually, it might not be one of my existing ideal clients. Maybe there's a new one to be created specifically for this product or service. Um, and then,
yes,
um,
the only thing I would add there is that I wouldn't run any more than three at a time. Um, because you could just spend all your time creating ideal client avatars and creating new things to go with a new person. Let's not do that. Let's stay focused and targeted.
yeah, no,
And the other
good
thing is
point.
absolutely review it once a year, but that's not to say that it goes away in a drawer and doesn't get looked at for a year. It should be somewhere you can see it on a daily basis. This reviewing it regularly thing is about clearing some time and space and doing kind of some bigger thinking about your business and how things are working, and do you want to continue in this direction or do you want to make a shift?
All excellent points. So yeah, I hope this has been helpful. I hope it's kind of helped people see the benefits that it can bring their business and actually how, you'd be doing yourself a disservice if you skip this step, which is why we want to talk about it, why it was one of the dive-in topics in our kind of season's theme, because it really is, yeah, one of those core pillars to work from to really building on those solid foundations.
Absolutely. And that is what is going to help attract the right kind of opportunities to and through your website.